Another day in the F1 paddock, and that means another tech row. And this time it's one that's led to championship leader Mercedes making a change to its car. And it's not the only team to do so. John Noble, we're talking diffusers here. What's happened? What's changing?
So this involves a quite intriguing area of development of the current cars. It's the rear end of the diffuser. We've seen it be exploited. Ferrari started this in Miami with a little gurney flap appearing. But things moved on a step in Canada, and Mercedes appeared with these quite aggressive serrated edges on the back of the diffuser, extends the diffuser area, more downforce there, feeds the air up to the rear wing, performance lift, but Ferrari has not too happy about it.
Yeah, and this is where it gets really interesting, because Mercedes had something appear on the car, this design, and Ferrari looked at it and thought, we've seen something like this before, or rather, we've put together the idea of doing this before and put it to the FIA, and they've said no. So what's gone on there? Certainly that's annoyed Ferrari, but what's the detail when it comes to that?
Yeah, Ferrari believes that it submitted a very similar concept to this at the start of the season, involving the same area of rules. What it involves is basically exploiting two areas at the back of the car. You're limited in terms of bodywork because of the legality boxes. There are many of those on the car, but you're allowed floor stays. So you can see these tiny little metal extensions that are done in theory to stop the bodywork flexing. Put a stay there, you can then have what's known as a fillet radius and an edge radius to curve it off, and this is what's allowed these extensions. Pre-season, from what we understand, Ferrari tried to exploit this area in a much more aggressive way, a very different idea, different concept. The FIA says it was a completely different way to what Mercedes did. Ferrari thinks it was very similar, but this has ended up in a lot of discussions backwards and forwards between Ferrari. It's now involved Red Bull, FIA, and then after the Barcelona Grand Prix, the FIA said, we've got to stop this becoming a ludicrous tech war, and have clamped it down and stopped teams doing it.
This is a great example, isn't it, of what we see with these regulations. For the past few years, it's all been about reference volumes, and you have various of those, there's 78 of those, I think, and you have all the edge radiuses and the fillet radius regulations, and they all interact. And this is one interesting area in the regs, that often these grey areas arise from kind of these different allowances that when they interact, you can actually create something. But in this case, while what Mercedes did was legal by the letter of the law, it's fallen foul broadly of that concept of primary purpose, hasn't it? Because the floor stay and that is being used to create an aerodynamic device. So that's the sort of baseline principle they come back to. And then when you put that together with where is this going to lead to absurdity, that's why it's actually pretty sensible to take action.
Yeah, what often happens with these technical issues, one team does it, exploits it, finds a grey area, then rivals either try and work out it's legal and copy it, like we've seen with the upside down wing, the Macarena wing that was appeared on Ferrari. Red Bull had been working on it before. McLaren's had its own version. It's trying to experiment with it for later in the season. So those concepts get pushed on. There are times where a team thinks, actually, we're better off stopping them doing what they want to do. From what we understand on this perspective, Ferrari, having seen the Mercedes concept being approved, it submitted some ideas, says, well, if you're allowed these serrated edges on the back of the diffuser, then why can't we have one on the edge by the rear tyre in an area where if a rival's battling, the risk is then that they'll touch tyres, there'll be punctures, and you'll open up a world of safety chaos. And I think this is the moment the FIA saw, well, if we don't stop this now, the next step is going to be even worse. In the future, we could have safety problems. Easiest route is to stop it happening. And that's what happened in an updated, they're not called technical directives these days, they're FIA docs, part of an evolving system, but they're commonly known in the paddock, and we refer to them as technical directives. So this is it. You cannot now use these edge radiuses, these fillet radiuses, these extensions for aerodynamic benefit.
And it's a great example of these tiny details. It's not a game changer in terms of performance, but anything you can do just to get that diffuser working that little bit harder, that little bit more efficiently, it is performance, isn't it? So it's not going to drop Mercedes into the midfield or anything, but it's just a classic one of those running battles. All of this stuff goes on in the background endlessly, and sometimes it's the things people never see, or it's tiny details that are too infinitesimally small for you to see almost with the naked eye. But this is a great example of one that's visible. You can see that serrated edge, and actually, most importantly, on the top, it's almost a pod effect you get, isn't it, from that floor stay with the detailing on it. So a great example of just how all of these things connect and the little areas that teams are looking for, and then those battles that go on off track, and there'll be countless of these going on.
Yeah, there's no magic bullet in Formula One. There's no single solution that's going to deliver you a brilliant car that's going to make you win. It's all about, this is something Fred Vasseur the Ferrari team principals talked about a lot. It's all about the marginal gains. It's 100th here, 100th here, 100th here. Add 100 parts of the car that are 100th better than before, you've got 1 second of lap time. And this is what teams are chasing all the time. This is why this diffuser area is being pursued. We saw Ferrari with its gurney flat from Miami. Racing Bulls has had a concept. We understand it's had to change as well for this weekend. Haas has done a step that's more in line with where Mercedes had to pull things back for this weekend. It's like the exhaust wings. Exhaust wings look to be an inconsequential part of the car, but it became a big development race. Ferrari started it, Haas followed. Everyone else has exploited an area of the regulations to feed air up to the rear wing, feed the diffuser more. That's now been banned for 2027 in regulations published this morning. Teams are chasing everything you can do just to find these hundredths, these little bits here and there, because it all adds up at the end of the day, especially if pole position is decided by hundredths of a second.
And that point about the Ferrari gurney flap, for example, that is on the trailing edge of the diffuser, that's a good example of what's fine, isn't it? Because that's perfectly legal, because it doesn't have that structure with the floor stay and the shaping. So that's fair game, and that's why if you look at the back of certain other cars, including the Ferrari, you will see that. But that's a whole different justification and different level to what we were seeing elsewhere. Yeah,
there's no question. You cannot say Mercedes was running an illegal car at any point, because it was fully legal. It had checked with the FIA. It was allowed to do it. These things often happen where teams do something, you get a subsequent clarification, then teams have to roll back and change things going forwards. That's what's happened in this case. It appeared most aggressively on the Mercedes in Canada. There were some modifications after the first discussions for Monaco, just to pull it back a little bit. It's been trimmed back even further here, as you can see from the photographs. Started off very, very aggressive. It's now there. All teams, I anticipate, will be doing. Potentially Alpine has got something on the car here this weekend, exploiting the same area. There will be a benefit. And if teams can see a benefit in a free area of the car that's not going to cost a fortune with wind tunnel testing, CFD development, new parts and new floor, they're going to go for it.
And justifiably, people will say, oh, well, why was this allowed in the first place? Why wasn't it clamped down on? But it's a great example of the challenge of the rule makers, isn't it? You know, there's things you can be critical of, but the simple fact is you formulate the rules, and then there's 11 teams with vastly greater resources than the FIA, far more people, far more ideas, and they will push these things to the nth degree. So there has to be this constant evolutionary process. And while they normally allow things that are legal and then maybe clamp down the next year, when you get something like this that could have short-term, absurd implications and outcomes, you do have to step in and say, okay, let's clamp down on this, don't you?
Yeah, the teams need to push into these grey areas. All the performance comes from the kind of marginal areas where you're probing regulation, where there's free lap time. If everyone followed the rules as intended, you will end up with identical cars. So you need to find these specific areas, this pushing the upside down rear wing. Even the exhaust wings, for example. Ferrari did something nobody else could copy, because it relates to where the gearbox and differential is. But the others managed to find a way through the rule book with what are known as tailpipe supports. These wings aren't wings according to the rules. They are support brackets to help support the tailpipe. So this is what teams are probing all the time. You've got, thousands and thousands of engineers up and down the paddock, up and down factories all around the world, probing these regulations against an FIA that's trying to police this all the time. So you end up in this constant debate. It's been the story of Formula One, probably from the first day of the World Championship, and it will be the story of Formula One for years to come.
Exactly, that's what it's all about, isn't it? This is the intersection of semantics, of geometry and engineering brilliance, and that's going to be going on endlessly. As we speak, there are countless ideas being thrown around, lots of paperwork going on, and we're going to see more of this as the season progresses.